4 years. That's how long Wolf and Iron has been going. Oh man, guys, I'm really excited. This is one of my favorite episodes that we do because it's only once a year. It's called our Manniversary episode, and it's a chance for me to look back and to think about what's happened in the last year, what's going to be coming up in the next year, and I get to talk to you guys about some of the inside stuff that's happening, some of the behind the scenes things. And so it's a time for me to reflect, but it's also time for me to put some challenges out there for myself and also to give you guys a heads up on some of the things that are coming up. So if you've ever wanted to know some of the things that are happening behind the scenes, this is definitely the episode to check out. And especially if you're one of the guys that's in this space where you have a podcast that you're doing or some other kind of blog or some kind of social media thing where you're trying to reach people with a message, I think this is going to give you some insight that's really helpful. Okay, here we go.
Duty, honor, country dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
The destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals.
Now we are the masters of our fate.
Hey there, men. Mike Yarbrough of Wolf and Iron here, founder and curator of wolfandiron.com, and this is one of my favorite episodes that we get to do every year called our Manniversary episode. And this is a chance for me to talk to you guys about all the cool stuff that's happened in the last year, the challenges, the success, the rewards, those kinds of things. And this one in particular is probably going to be the most packed full of just craziness that's happened in my life. So the last Manniversary episode was a little bit late. It actually came out in November of last year, but August is technically the sort of the official Manniversary month for Wolf and Iron. And in the last Manniversary episode, I talked to you guys a good bit about some of the family issues that were going on, some of the struggles that we were having, and how we had kind of come out of some of that stuff, but there was still a good bit of tension, a good bit of challenges for my family. Well, thankfully, most of that stuff has been resolved, and my wife and I are doing better than ever. The relationship with my sons is better than ever. And so thank you guys for hanging in there. I got a lot of really good feedback on the last Manniversary episode, just about how I was open with some of those challenges. And, you know, that's just how we got to be, guys. I mean, I don't have this stuff figured out yet. And there's a lot of things that I'm learning about myself and a lot of things that I'm learning about my family and other people. So there's nothing wrong, and there's absolutely everything right with getting help from counselors and from people that you trust to speak into your life and help you out through those challenging times. Now, I'll tell you some amazing things. Okay, first of all, I wasn't sure if I could actually pull this last year off. It was such a tremendous challenge, and you guys will see as this episode unfolds, you'll get a chance to see just how crazy and how packed full of stuff this last year was for us. Okay, and so I'm going to talk about Rustic and Main. So if you guys aren't familiar, Rustic and Main is was a side project. Now it's a full-time project. You can head over to rusticandmain.com, like Main Street, and check that out. I make rings and do some other things like that. And I've got a team that helps me now, but there's a whole story that goes along with that. Some of you guys are familiar with it already. You can also head over to wolfandiron.com/rustic, and that'll also pop you over there with the magic of URL redirection. It's like a digital teleportation. So I'm going to talk about Rustic and Main. I'm going to talk about Wolf and Iron's growth over the last year. I'm going to talk about some of the strategy changes that have happened with Wolf and Iron and some of the things that are going to change now that I'm working for myself full time. And so there's some exciting stuff just over the horizon, guys. And I can only give you kind of like a glimpse into it right now. I can't give like a full description because I'm afraid if I unveil what I have planned, that there will be people at my door saying, hey, when can this thing happen? When can we start this? I'm ready. And I'm just not ready for that yet. And so I follow some lean principles and some agile principles when it comes to starting businesses or launching things. And so we're going to do it. Even though I really want to go with this thing, head on, that's not always the best approach. And so I'm going to give you guys a glimpse at some of the stuff that's coming up that'll actually bring in some money for Wolf and Iron and also kind of take it to the next level. And I'm going to talk about the numbers and things like that as well. Okay, here we go. So here's a bit more details and insight into the Rustic and Main story for you guys who aren't familiar. And I've had several of you reach out and say, we want to know more about Rustic and Main. We want to know more about how you actually how you started making rings in your garage and were able to, within a year's time, just about, quit your day job and come home and do that full time. So I'm going to give you guys some insight into that. I can't do it exhaustively just because it's probably too long of a story. But a quick synopsis is this. Last year, in April, I launched Rustic and Main with this idea of having wedding rings basically made out of historic woods and other symbolic materials. And so that's sort of like the unique bent. We have a story with the rings. They're not just, pretty to look at. But because they're wood and they're light, there's also that sort of uniqueness about it anyhow. So this kicked off last April, and within the first month, we probably made $1,000, maybe $1,500, which is not bad for a startup, right? And things have just continued to grow since then. Last year, when I did the last Manniversary episode, so in November, we were just starting to really see an escalation in sales that it was kind of worrying me, actually, guys, because I'm the only guy doing this at this point, and I'm getting up at like 4:30 in the morning, knocking out some rings a couple times a week, working after hours when I come home and that kind of stuff, working on the weekends. And so I'm really just trying to get this thing off the ground, and I've got a vision for where it can be, but I'm really nervous about the idea of just making rings all day. That doesn't seem very practical. So, and not only that, but the number of rings I would have to make in order to replace my full-time job and also cover insurance and all the business expenses was just insane. So I knew I was going to need some help. And so sometime after December, I believe, we had all the Christmas orders to take care of, and it may have actually been sometime early this year in 2017. I was able to find some people to bring in to help me out. And that, I'll tell you guys, I'm one of the most fortunate and one of the most blessed guys that I know, because I'm able to find friends that have, skills with their hands, that also need jobs and that don't want to do the regular kind of 8 to 5, cubicle job, and that we're excited about coming and working for a startup. I mean, how often does that happen, right? And so now, here in August, I've got 4 employees that work for me, and plus myself and my wife. She's actually sort of an employee, but she gets paid sort of on the side, But anyhow, so we've got a lot of things happening with Rustic and Main. So it's really, really grown. It's taken off very well. And it was June. I actually had the opportunity to quit my job. We were actually making enough money every month that I was technically losing money by being at work. And so, and since then, the business has continued to grow. So right now we're at the place where we're selling a lot of rings. Most of our ring advertisement and stuff like that, for you guys who are interested, is all Facebook. But we also do a good bit on Instagram, and those things are kind of interrelated. So we just see everything's online. We just see a lot of good movement there. So the business is going very well. Every month is better than the last month in terms of sales. We're figuring out more and more about how to run things. And this whole Rustic and Main thing has given me so much insight into the practicality of running a business, and has also allowed me to transfer some of that knowledge over to Wolf and Iron. And so the Rustic and Main's a fairly straightforward business. We make a product, we ship the product out, we advertise that product, and so on and so forth. And so from the bare bones kind of side of things, it's pretty straightforward. But it's also really exciting to see the business grow monetarily, because that allows us to reinvest into the business and see it grow again. And it's also allowed me to take some of that money and invest it into Wolf and Iron. And so some of the growth that we've seen with Wolf and Iron over the last year has actually come from the funds that Rustic and Main makes. And so this is how what I'm learning, is this is how like rich guys do things. They get one cool idea, they start making money off of it, they reinvest it, and they may have some failed businesses, but over a period of time, they have enough successful businesses that they just, they have money coming in from all these different places. And next thing you know, I'll be a Donald Trump. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but the point is, I'm investing money into the things that I actually care about. And I'm able to do things now with Wolf and Iron that I wasn't able to do before consistently. To kind of give you guys an example of some of those things. Whenever I produce a podcast, for me alone, it's about somewhere between a 3 and a 4 hour process for an hour long episode or a 45-minute episode where I'm interviewing someone else. And to get someone else to be involved in that process, it costs money. And to get the reach that you're really hoping to have with that episode, to really get the most out of it, that costs money in forms of advertisement. And so while there are ways to do this more organically, to get that organic traffic, it's probably not the smartest way, especially when you're just starting out. And so, it costs money to make money. So, but that's something that I'm actually able to do now, and that's something I'm really excited about. So there's a lot of cool things on the horizon, but that kind of gives you some insight into the Rustic and Main story. I'm not going to go into the details about how much money we're making. It's a good bit in terms of sales. It's a lot more than I ever thought we were going to make this early on into the company. And so right now we're actually looking for a space to expand where everything's happening out of my garage. And so it's pretty hot in there. It's getting kind of crowded with 4 guys working in there making rings. And we're trying to find a cool space around the Charlotte area, something that has sort of that old school kind of like an old fire station or maybe an old abandoned train station, but not so old that it's haunted looking kind of feel, but almost, you know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, those kinds of things are really difficult to find in this area. So we're still looking. We may even actually pursue the idea of building a structure and having a sort of a shared use space there. So obviously I want something that's going to serve well for Rustic and Main, any other kind of wood projects that we're going to be doing out of there. So wood shoppy type stuff, but a little bit more upscale than just a dirt floor. But then also have a spot for Rustic and Main to do these kinds of things, a podcast, to do interviews, and really just showcase some of the flavor and the feel of the Rustic and Main and the sort of the manliness things that we got going on. Okay. I totally forgot to add this in here when I recorded this episode, so I'm kind of sticking it in here, and if it sounds funny, I apologize. But I completely forgot that over this last year, I actually wrote a book, and that book is actually scheduled to come out this September. So it's called The Guy's Guide to Pocket Knives. And the way this came about was in December of last year, 2016, a publisher reached out to me. They had seen an article that I had written on pocket knives on Wolf and Iron, and they said, "Hey, we think you'd do a good job writing a book on pocket knives." Now, I was actually in the process of writing a book already. This first book that I wanted to release is called Tending the Fire, A Guide to Living Manfully. But I had to put it on hold because I thought this is a really good opportunity. Breaking into this sort of publishing world, it's a bit unknown, right? So, I mean, if you haven't done it before, it's a bit kind of scary. There's the opportunity, right, where I could write my own book and go through all the process of getting it self-published and then try to hawk it to you guys who are following me, which is not a bad process, and that'll probably happen when I actually get that one released. But I thought it would be a really good opportunity to just write a book that's a very straightforward thing, that's on topic that I care about and would be fun to write, and also be able to work with the publisher and kind of go through those ins and outs. And also there was a really short timeline. They said, basically, we need this by April of next year. So from December until April, which actually got pushed out to May, they said, we need you to write this book. And so basically you would be responsible, I would be responsible for writing the content, and then they would be responsible for actually putting all the pictures together, formatting it, and that kind of stuff. And so they said, we'll pay you an upfront fee, and then you'll get percentage after, so on. So just going through that process was really cool. And over the period of about 5 months, I wrote a book. It's called The Guy's Guide to Pocket Knives. And so that's coming out. Now, I will tell you that when I did this, my wife thought I was absolutely crazy and actually caused some problems, some pretty serious problems, actually, some real contention for several weeks for us in the house, because Rustic and Main is already going. I'm trying to do that as a main project. I've got Wolf and Iron, which I'm already committed to. Plus, I have a full-time job and a marriage and things like that. And here's where I screwed up, guys. When I asked my wife about it, I didn't really get a full, yes or no, you should do it, shouldn't do it kind of thing. And I think more than likely, I wasn't really looking for that. I was kind of just more excited about the opportunity to write this book. And as an introvert, I have a tendency, and we have tendencies, to kind of plan things out in our head. Like, here's how it's going to go, and here's why I know this is going to be okay for me to do this. And so I already had it in my head that I could write this during my lunchtime. What I would normally use for writing articles for Wolf and Iron, I would just shift that over to doing this book. And Wolf and Iron wasn't producing a lot of articles at the time anyhow, and so I thought, if anything, I can just get some guys to write some guest articles. That'll kind of help for that space, but I can use this time effectively to write the book. And I did, actually. So that actually worked out, but there was a lot of contention in terms of just the stress of adding yet another project into the Yarbrough's world and all of that. But it turned out to be a good thing. The book has finally gone off to print, so I'm really excited about that. I think it turned out really well. It's a lot of fun to read, actually, the type of book that it is. If you guys know me, I have some dry humor and that kind of stuff, but I can't let too many pages go by without throwing in a joke or two. So you guys, it's a really good book, and there'll be more to come on this around September timeframe, and then I'll probably be pushing it like crazy, around December and Christmas time. Okay, let's jump over to the Wolf and Iron side of things. So I just took a listen to the last Manniversary episode, and at that time, so November of last year, there were 5,000 followers on the Facebook page, which I was really excited about at the time. But now compared to our 31,000 or so followers on Facebook, that seems very, very small. And the cool thing about that, though, is that it means that there's been a lot of new people added to Wolf and Iron over the last year, and that there's a growth strategy that seems to be working. And it also means that for me as a content producer, it means that there's a lot of new eyes that haven't seen the old content. So those several hundred articles that I've written in the first couple of years, the old podcasts and those kinds of things, I get a chance to put those things back out in front of these guys. And so if you're a new guy and you're listening to this and you're saying, yeah, I joined in the last year, I haven't seen all the cool stuff you got going on, you're going to see these articles kind of come back around. And just by the nature of Facebook and Twitter and things like that being sort of a feed-driven thing, there's always stuff that just people just miss. So there's a good chance that you guys haven't read all 250 of the articles that we have out on Wolf and Iron, or listened to every podcast episode just because it didn't show up in your feed. And so you guys will have a chance to see those again. So that's sort of a lesson that I'm learning, and it's a good lesson for you guys too if you're in the content management or content creation space, is that every 6 months or so you have new eyes out there that are willing to and longing for content that haven't seen the stuff that you've put out before. And so you got to have a good balance of things that are regularly released content, but you've also got to understand that people are craving just good content. And so if you have a good article and it happens to be 3 years old, it doesn't really matter. I mean, for crying out loud, guys, I read books that are from like the 1800s. So if that stuff's still working, there's, an article that you wrote 6 months ago can certainly be republished. But 31,000 followers is a pretty good achievement. And to kind of give you guys an idea of what that growth looks like. Right now we're picking up at about 500 or 600 or so new followers a week. And I'll be the first to say that numbers, especially the numbers of likes or followers, it doesn't really matter a whole lot in terms of the success of a company. So if a company has 70,000 followers on Facebook, a like doesn't cost very much. It doesn't cost the consumer or the customer, however you want to think about it, very much. The liker, I don't know. It doesn't really cost them very much. It's just like, hey, I have a general interest in what you're doing. It's not a serious commitment. But one of the things that I'm excited about is that I'm beginning to see more and more engagement with you guys happening. And what I mean by engagement is I put some content out there and you guys respond and in some kind of way, and we have a conversation. Now, the number of followers actually does contribute to this quite a bit. So in terms of just organic reach, meaning I put let's say I post an article out there on Facebook anyhow, and there's more of a chance that it's going to resonate with somebody who just happens to see it on their feed, right? Because there's 31,000 or so people out there that that are following the page and may see this. Here's what it takes to really get that thing to take off. One of you guys comments on it, and I respond. Now Facebook goes, hey, this thing is getting some kind of traction. Let's make it a little bit more presentable in other people's feeds. And so now it shows up in other people's feeds more readily, maybe at the top of the feed or something like that. Another person comments, I respond. You guys see what's happening here, right? And so really what it takes for content to organically grow is for just interactions. And those interactions happen when someone sees something and it resonates with them. And so a good way to do that, if you're a content guy, if you're sort of in this space, is you create the content, you put it out there for a few days, see what kind of just natural traction it gets. If you know it's great content, if it's a video, for example, or if it's an image and it's just not getting picked up, feel free to do a boost on that thing and just to see if it's, meaning advertise it just a little bit. And just advertise it to the people that follow you and their friends, and just to see if it gets any kind of extra traction. And so, because what you're looking for is for people to start saying, hey, this is cool. I didn't see this before. I want to make a comment on this thing, and then kind of get some back and forth. So that's been really helpful. And having the followers has been really good too. Facebook has some really cool stuff, guys, out there. This is why you're going to see people are just going more and more towards Facebook in terms of their ads and that being their platform, because they just make it so easy. I'll tell you one of the things that I can do out there, which is really cool. Let's say I record a podcast. Let's say like an episode like this one. And I say, this thing has got to get out there. The guys have got to listen to this thing. Well, I can create like a small clip of this thing, not using Facebook. I can create like a small little video clip of this podcast. And I can say, I want to advertise this to the people who are following me on Facebook, but have also interacted with me on Facebook, but have specifically interacted with me through a video type of medium. So I published a video, and that's their kind of content that they want to consume. And then I can even narrow that down and say, but I only want to target the guys who are really interested in podcasting, or I only want to target the guys who are interested in Theodore Roosevelt or something like that. So we can get very specific, and it makes it super easy to do. Now it can be expensive over time, but if you guys are if you're treating your social media, your blog, whatever it happens to be, if you're treating that like a business, then you're going to make an investment. That's just the way it's going to be. People who are serious about their business are going to make an investment. And so don't think about this as this is a side project and I'm just going to kind of, if it takes off, it takes off. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's just playing around. If you guys are in this space and you're doing something, treat it like a business and don't be afraid to. You got to understand there's plenty of ability to see growth and make money in this space. And there's going to be a lot more people doing it over the next 10 years. And so if you're getting involved now, you're better off than you will be 8 to 10 years from now when that market's even more crowded. So you want to make a name for yourself. Okay, that was just a little inside tip for you guys. Now in June, I left my job, and I had a really good job. I had a cozy job. I was a software developer. I'd been doing this for 15 plus years, and I was an architect level, meaning I made good money. I had the ability to do some design stuff. I was really more in that consultant kind of space, but I also wrote code pretty much all day long. But I had a good job, and I worked with really good people, worked for a good company, but I quit that. And I quit a 6-figure plus job so that I could come and make circles in my garage, basically. And that's been the greatest decision that I've made in the last year. I'll tell you what, guys, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. But I've been able to feed my family so far for the last, over 2 months now. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Nobody's starved yet, nor have we had to beg for food. The business is continuing to grow, and I'm growing. I'm listening to like audible books, audiobooks all day long, guys. And I'm just getting so much information about running a business and growing as a man and just so many different things. And so that's just fantastic. I love doing that stuff. But I also get a chance to share the vision of the company's growth and that kind of stuff with my employees. And so there's a lot of cool stuff. My wife's involvement, my kids' involvement. I mean, it's just going really, really well. And there's a part of me, that you guys may be thinking about this as well. There's a part of me that's like, when's the shoe going to drop? When is his company going to experience the oh crap, can we really pull this off kind of moment? I don't know. I'm trying to take things slow so that doesn't happen, but it may. And if it does, we'll just weather the storm the best we can. But all this being said, me leaving my job has freed up more time for this kind of stuff, for Wolf and Iron. And so my long-term vision is I do Rustic and Main for several months. I'm involved in that business, and maybe I continue to be involved in that business. But I also want to start transitioning more to doing more Wolf and Iron stuff, because this is really where a big part of my passion lies. And so one of the things that I've had to kind of nail down is, what does my podcast schedule look like? Like, how do I want to do this podcast thing? As you guys know, I started off doing articles mainly because that's what I could do. That was a place that I could start. I love to write, and I had the opportunity to do that during my lunch breaks at work, so that worked out pretty well. And so for the first few years, articles was really the main thing that I released. And this was before I really understood about how to grow Wolf and Iron as a business or as a social media growth and that kind of stuff. But I'm just releasing content. I'm just trying to make sure that I can do it and that you guys are getting some content and that I'm getting good feedback on it. But the engagement for those articles was fairly low compared to, say, videos or podcasts or even images that I would post. And so over time, I began to do more images, and then eventually I began to do podcast. And this year, I've actually ventured into videos more. And you guys really, really respond to the videos, probably most of all, in terms of just raw response, immediate, people jumping on and saying, yeah, I get that, or I agree with you, or something like that. Now, it's funny for me because I have all the time in the world to read an article. I don't have a whole lot of time. Well, I do now, but I didn't previously have a lot of time to listen to podcasts because I was working. I mean, and the type of work that I did really required my attention. And I certainly didn't have time to watch videos during the day. So I always thought, like, who has time to do this stuff? And so when I put out a video, I'm like, nobody's got time to watch this thing. But, it shows what I know, right? So videos is something that I'm going to be trending more towards. But the point of me saying all this is that you guys are going to be seeing a lot more content of this type, both podcasts and videos, coming out over the next several months. And as I begin to get more of a routine for releasing content, and I finally figured out how I want to schedule podcasts, what my podcast release schedule is going to look like, what are the types of guests I want to have on the show, and how I've done this. Now, maybe other podcasters do this as well. I don't know. But one of the challenges that I have is being in this broad space of manliness, right? I'm talking about what it means to be a man. This is huge. I mean, this is like every day, everything in life can fall into this category. And so I have to narrow this down to who are the kinds of people that I want to have on the show, and how many podcast interviews do I want to have versus just me talking like this. And here's what I found out. I'm going to do 26, so it's 52 weeks in a year, right? I'm going to do 26 interviews. So I've got 22 slots. So if you think about like an Excel spreadsheet, I've got 26 rows where there's somebody that I can interview. And what I've done actually, and I think it's pretty genius, but maybe somebody else is doing this, but I've come up with it on my own, just so you guys know. I've come up with it on my own. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have those, I have categories for each of those slots. And so I may have 6 of those slots maybe for an author. And some of those authors may be for family, relationship type stuff. I've got some slots for counselors. I've got some slots for adventurers, travelers. I've got some slots for martial artists and people that are going to be in that kind of space. I got slots for business success and that kind of stuff. And then I have a few left over at the end for miscellaneous. So just guys that I find interesting. I don't really know how they fit into the whole manliness sphere specifically, but I just want to have them on the program because they're cool. Or something may come up that really is a good fit that I didn't account for. So I've got 26 slots to fill a year. That's not hard. That's definitely doable. And actually the way podcasting works, a lot of times you bunch those things up. So I may have, like this last week, I had 2 podcast calls. Next week I'll have at least 1, but I may have more than that. And so filling those 26 slots is not hard, but it's also purposeful. There are actually 2 of those slots that are going to be really big. I'm going to push those pretty hard because they're areas that really matter to me. And that is, I've got 2 spots where we're going to be sponsoring charitable things, charitable organizations that are things every guy should care about. Okay. One of those is always going to be focused around veterans. So it's going to be an opportunity for me to interview someone who's part of something that has to do with supporting our veterans. And it's going to be an opportunity for you guys to give. As we have show sponsors, those show sponsors will also have the opportunity to have their stuff, their sponsorship basically donated to that charity. And so it's going to be a way to kind of call out and be able to give back. And so that was one of the things that I thought about when I was putting together the podcast schedule and the mission of Wolf and Iron. It's like, I'm helping guys be better guys. I'm helping you to grow as a man. But I want to be able to raise awareness on some of these issues that I think are just, we're not good guys if we can't support these things. So veterans is going to be one of those things. And if you're a veteran, listen to this. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate your service, and thank God for you. Now, the other thing is going to be human trafficking and the fight against that. Here in Charlotte, we've got some ridiculously high numbers for human trafficking, especially during the big events, NASCAR and the football and that kind of stuff. So we've got some guys just locally that are doing an excellent job of fighting against human trafficking, actually rescuing women and girls from a life of sex slavery and abuse. And so that's something else we're going to be promoting, guys. We're going to be saying, like, look, let's fight against this. And so we're going to have someone on at least once a year to talk about this subject. And it's going to be tough. It's not something we want to talk about. It's not something I want to think about. But when I hear about it, I get fired up. And it's good battle, guys. It's good battle. And so you're going to have an opportunity to hear about that. You're also going to have an opportunity to give to these things, or be encouraged to give and inspired to give to any organizations that may be local to you. And so this schedule is going to help me find the people that are the best people in these areas. So it's not just like, I saw this guy on Instagram. He was kind of neat. Let's have him on the podcast. And it's also not me just trying to knock out interview after interview after interview, week after week, just so I'm just getting content out. I want you guys to hear Wolf and Iron's podcast and go, every time, it doesn't matter, I can just choose an episode at random and it's going to be awesome. And the person that's on there talking, that Mike's interviewing, he's gonna know his stuff, and I'm going to get something from it. Okay, I want you guys to have that sort of confidence. And I want to have, in order to do that, I've got to have the freedom to go out and choose those kinds of people. So I've got to have the freedom in my schedule to do that. And so having actually a limited schedule, a limited number of people that I can get on the podcast every year is going to help me do that. Now, those are going to come out every other week. That's the plan. And every other week, so in between those times, is going to be me talking about something that I care about. So something related to manliness. So it may be something that's seasonal, maybe political. It may be something that is timeless. So we're talking about character and virtues and that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But I've got a lot of things scheduled. That's not hard. I can come up with stuff to talk about all day long. So that's not a problem. So that's that's sort of some of the growth in terms of the mindset of what Wolf and Iron's doing, and what I'm trying to be purposeful about the strategy here. All right, let's jump into the monetizing of Wolf and Iron and kind of what that looks like. This is a big question that anybody who's in this space always has. Creating content, getting started, that kind of stuff is actually pretty easy. So there's not a whole lot of stuff that's that really needs to be taught in that area, except maybe like, how to title stuff, how often to deliver content, that kind of stuff, get on a schedule and those things. But monetizing is a challenge because there's no straightforward path. There's actually a lot of paths, which is exciting because that means that you can find ways to monetize your online presence that's unique to you. And so you don't have to follow the set path of just, I'm going to make money off of advertisements, which would actually be would be a challenge for me to do, because Wolf and Iron doesn't have the same kind of following, the same kind of numbers as, say, like Art of Manliness does, or some other sites out there. And some of that has to do with, and I'm not saying this is for Art of Manliness, but some of the sites out there you go to and it's so junky with ads, and it's just like all they're trying to do is just nickel and dime your eyeballs. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just awful. And they're cheesy in how they push out content, and it really becomes all about that ad revenue stuff. And I don't like that at all. So that's not going to be my strategy. I've actually taken down most, if not all, of the ads on the site, just because it wasn't returning enough of a profit for me to even worry about. So, but I have had the idea of how am I going to monetize Wolf and Iron in the future? What's that going to look like? Now, so the other option out there is that you set up a store and you sell some materials. And so if we think about this, that's potential, right? Some of you guys have asked for Wolf and Iron t-shirts, and I'm sure you guys would definitely plug into some of the other stuff that would come out with. But there's also that also is a volume kind of business. So imagine if I have a t-shirt printed up and it costs me $6 to have that printed, and that's probably low ball, but let's say it's around $6 to have that t-shirt printed up, And then I sell the shirt for $20, but then I also ship, maybe I pay for shipping. There's a little bit of packaging materials in there. At the end of the day, I'm probably making like, $10 or $12 off of a t-shirt. So I'm not just crushing it, right? I'm not selling that t-shirt and I'm making $50. And so in order to really make any kind of volume of money, I've got to be selling a lot of t-shirts and shipping those suckers out. And so that sort of happens in sort of an ebb and flow as people sort of, during Christmas seasons, holiday seasons and stuff like that, it does become sort of a retail thing. People are going to buy stuff all through the year, but there's also going to be periods of time when people just, they're not, that's not their jam. They're on vacation. They're doing something else. So, but that's definitely, some income can come from that. That also costs, there's also an upfront investment for me in that. So I have to say, okay, if I'm going to have, a t-shirts printed up, I'm going to have 100 of them printed. And so they're going to cost $6. That's $600, right? I got to shell out. So the idea is that, there's an upfront cost there. And that was honestly, guys, that was a cost that I couldn't afford before. I can now. And actually I could throw all kinds of stupid money at t-shirts and things like that, hoping that they'll sell. But that also may mean that I've got 100 t-shirts sitting on the shelf and I'm waiting for them to move and they're not, right? The good news is that you can make your money back fairly quickly in that, sell a number of t-shirts and you've already made up for it. But there's still that upfront investment. So that's kind of what held me back before. Also, to kind of give you an idea of what the numbers look like, this is just very anecdotal, but what some of the numbers look like early on. So when I had 1,000 followers on Facebook and I put some stuff out there about a t-shirt, people were asking for t-shirts. I had a Teespring campaign. Now, Teespring, the way it works is you basically design the shirt, you put it out there, but they don't print anything until a certain number of people order. Now, of course, that means that they take more of the money. So instead of that t-shirt costing me $6, basically they're going to probably take $12 of the cost, right? And so it's really more of a promotional thing. Unless you're selling a lot of t-shirts, and you can off of Teespring, you're really it's not gonna work out in your favor too much. It's not a business model you want to pursue long term. But to give you guys kind of an idea, 1,000 followers, put some t-shirts out there for sale on Teespring, limited time campaign, that kind of stuff. I think we sold one time maybe 12 t-shirts, and I probably bought 5 of those. So, you really got to have still some traffic and some interest and stuff out there for merchandise. And so that's definitely going to happen. We're going to have a Wolf and Iron store. More than likely, I had hoped that would launch in September. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's probably going to be closer to the November timeframe, but I definitely want to get it out there before Christmas time so that you guys have an opportunity to see some stuff, get some manly gifts for people and those kinds of things, and support Wolf and Iron. So that's a piece of it. The other thing is, and you guys have seen this, is that's probably taking off more and more in terms of how people monetize their online presence. And that is through some sort of a mastermind group, or the selling of courses, or the joining of some kind of group, paid group, that is going to give the people that are involved, something beyond what they're getting from all the free content. And that's definitely more of where I'm headed. I'll tell you right now, I don't feel as though I'm a mastermind kind of guy. I like the idea of a mastermind group. I want to be part of and am part of mastermind groups. The only thing is that my personality type, being an introvert and being, I don't know what you call it. It's not uncaring. I don't know what it is, but it's basically, I don't want to keep up with 20 people's lives or 100 people's lives and kind of know what's going on. And I'm going to feel a desire to do so. So like, for example, if I started a mastermind group for Wolf and Iron, you guys might join, and we're going to be talking about what's going on in our lives. I need to know what Joe and Steve and John and everybody else has going on in their life, and they're going to give their update and about what's happening with their life and their marriage, or whatever it is we happen to be going through, strength training, et cetera, helping them to become a better man. Well, that's just not how I function. I can have probably 4 or 5 guys that I can really be knitted in with. And everybody else, if you signed up for my mastermind, you would basically just be joining a program initially. And that may be beneficial, but I'm probably not the guy to lead that, just to be honest. And I have to know that about myself. There's a big temptation for me to say, yeah, I'm going to start a mastermind group, and that's what I'm going to do. But honestly, the way my mind works is that I'm constantly being pulled in different directions with different ideas. And so I need something that is where I can speak to a lot of people and have a big effect without a lot of management of the individuals, if that makes sense. And it's probably because I'm an unfeeling, uncaring ogre, or it could just be my personality. I don't know. But either way, right now, masterminds are not in the future. But I do have something that is, and it's sort of like a mastermind, but it may actually be better. And I want to give you guys just a hint of what this is. I can't go into a lot of details about how it works and that kind of stuff, but I want to just kind of give you guys sort of an idea. I'm going to call it the Foundry. And the way the Foundry works is, or it's going to work, is that it's going to be a paid online group that you guys get to be a part of. There will be a Facebook group component to this as well, but there will also be another communications channel where we're going to do some things that you can't do in Facebook. So if you guys are part of Facebook groups now, and you probably are, they're really great for niche type things, in my opinion. So for example, I'm a part of a kombucha growing Facebook group, and you know what? It never gets off topic. I'm part of the Grand Tours fan group, right? So for the Grand Tour show, never gets off topic. All right. But when you have something that's more broad, when you're talking about manhood, manliness, or politics or something like that, really, you're just opening yourself up to just run the gamut with just crazy talk, people posting stuff that isn't helpful, and it becomes very undirected very quickly. And so the goal is, how do we take something that is as broad as being a man and boil that down into the categories that somebody in their season of life actually cares about? And so that's what I'm working on. So the Foundry is going to do that. So the Foundry is going to be a way for you to join an elite group of guys that, and it may be hundreds of guys, thousands of guys in the Foundry. Hopefully it will be. And you're going to be able to join this group of men, and you're going to be able to plug in different areas of life that you care about. So you're going to be able to say, man, my marriage is on the rocks right now, guys, and this is where I need to be plugging in. I need to be learning everything I can about marriage, but I also need to be learning something about fitness, and I need to be learning about, fatherhood, and I need to be learning about finances and so on. But you're going to be able to jump into these areas and have specific focuses rather than jumping into a group that has a very, very broad focus. Okay. Now, similar to a mastermind, you're going to have the ability to get some really good education out of these groups. So my goal, my job on the back end of this is to go and find the guys that know this stuff, that can talk about this stuff, to help kind of lead and coordinate, some of the broader discussions for the group, and that kind of stuff, right? But it's not going to be so much of we all sit, meet up once a month and have like a 20 guy, sort of mastermind huddle and just kind of go through everybody's issues and talk about, stuff like that, right? Because this doesn't work. I've tried that in smaller groups of guys, and it just doesn't work. And I don't want to try to experiment with you guys in a larger setting. But what most guys need is they just need some direction. And then they need a few guys in their life to help them kind of take it to the next level. So that's the other thing the Foundry is going to be able to do. You guys are going to be able to say, hey man, I'm struggling with marriage, and I'm in this, this group with these guys that are focused on this thing. Plus I'm in a couple of other groups, but I'm talking to Joe and I'm talking to Jeff, and these guys, we just seem to be clicking. And you're going to be able to break off actually into your own separate group with these guys and say, hey fellas, let's just have a once a week, maybe once every other week, just accountability session. Maybe we do a phone call, a screen share, something like that. And you guys are getting some accountability from each other. And really, guys, I want to tell you, you don't have to be an expert in this area. So like if, what you really need, most guys need is some accountability. They need somebody who, they need good friends. They need guys who are committed to the same values, but you don't have to be an expert counselor most of the time to better yourself in some of these areas. And so I want you guys to have the ability to basically pour into each other. That's kind of the idea of the Foundry. A foundry is actually where things are made. Their molten steel is poured into molds, and those molds are shipped out of the factory. And so that's what the Foundry does. And so you guys are going to have the ability to pour into each other. You're going to have the ability to get poured into from me and from other guys that are contributing to these different areas of life. And it's also gonna be a lot of fun. The way it's gonna be structured, there's a lot of chances for tomfoolery and stuff like that to happen. So this is a good time. There's also gonna be some rules in place. We're not gonna have a bunch of cursing. We're not gonna have guys bitching about feminism and the problems with the culture and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's going to be on total lockdown. Obviously, that's not going to work. You can't do that. I don't want to do that. But it's not going to be a free-for-all. You guys are going to have the opportunity to have a place where you can go and you can grow, have some fun, but get encouraged. And so that's the goal, right? Now that I've really sold this thing, I could probably throw out a big price tag and you guys would be like, yeah, sign me up, man. I want to do this thing. That's not, I'm not there yet with the pricing, and I'm not there yet to launch this thing because, as you can hear and as you can kind of gauge, this is going to take a big investment on my part. And so what I've learned from doing Rustic and Main is that having good people in place to help you with something, to help you have something grow is absolutely key. And I've got to get myself in a position where I can remove myself from being involved in every single aspect of something like this, because otherwise it would just kill me. It'd be overwhelming, and I don't want to get overwhelmed. I need that creative space to be able to grow and to come up with new ideas and to kind of have that sort of the outside view of things instead of the daily, kind of under the weight of all of it kind of things. But that being said, I've got to have good moderators. I've got to have good people in places for the different areas that we're going to be focused on, and that kind of stuff. So most likely in the next 4 to 6 months, the Foundry will be launching. I will probably be doing some invitation-only things where I'm bringing some guys in to be a part of it, and then we'll have kind of a kickoff where there'll be probably a limited time, low price, special, whatever kind of thing, where you can get in on the ground floor of this thing, and of course you get to get all the bugs and stuff like that as well. But hopefully those things will be worked out, and you guys are going to really be able to help give some direction to this thing, because I know you guys are craving that. I know you guys are joining groups out there and you're wanting to be part of things, but you've got limited time to invest. You've got limited funds to invest, and that's where most guys are. But what we need is accountability, and we need constantly to have other men in our lives that we're looking to and going, that guy's got it right in that area. I want to be more like that guy. And so if you're looking for a place where you can pour into other guys and also receive some good sharpening, iron sharpens iron type of stuff, that's what the Foundry is going to be about. And so a little bit of a taste there, more to come obviously on that. And look, I appreciate you guys. This last year couldn't be the year it is without you guys. That's just the plain truth. Every time I release some content and you guys comment and you share, that's what makes this thing work. Okay. The changes that you want to see in other men and in society are going to happen as sort of a grassroots, ground floor kind of thing. And you guys are being a part of that. You guys are making that happen. And so I appreciate all the great compliments and feedback that you guys are giving for Wolf and Iron. I get emails and texts from you guys, messages and stuff like that from you guys fairly often, just saying, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. Look, keep those things coming. And look, take the time to encourage other men today. That's what you really need to be doing. If you listen to a Wolf and Iron episode like this or some other podcast and you get fired up, hey, take that energy and help inspire another guy. Just give him a compliment. Say, hey, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. You're a hard worker, whatever the case is. Keep it up. We got to be serious about this. I'm not trying to carry the weight of manliness on my shoulders here. I'm really trying to help you guys get inspired, and you guys are really responding very well. Well, guys, that's all I have today. And I wanted to say thank you again, and until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.